Hello and welcome back. In our previous videos we looked at installing Cypress. We installed Cypress with the default scaffold examples, and I just want to go through and explain what files and what folders are generated as part of that installation. So we installed Cypress within our Cypress folder and we gave it a name of Cypress. So I'm just going to open up our project, and you can see that it generated our end-to-end folder, the fixtures folder, and a support folder. If you're looking at Cypress tutorials or articles, older versions of Cypress would have referred to this as the integrations folder, but if you're following along from these videos, the latest versions now include end-to-end or E2E folders, because we're now given the option of doing component testing or end-to-end testing. So your E2E folder is the main folder where you would store your tests. So if I expand this folder, you've got your getting started and advanced examples. I refer to these as suites. I think it's personal preference as to what you refer these to, but it's a nice way of organizing tests. Within each of these folders, you've got your spec files. Your spec files are your test files, and within each of these, you can have more than one test. Spec files may be written as JavaScript, in this case they are .js, but you can also use TypeScript, and there are other formats that are applicable to Cypress as well. I'll go into what these spec files look like in a different video, but for now we'll just move on to our fixtures folder. The scaffold project will include this example.json file, and your fixtures folder is where you would store most of your data for use in your tests. A lot of this will be static data, but if you want to, you could write integrations within your test to pull out data from a database, to insert data within a database, and then you can write that data into a JSON file and use that data within your tests. The advantage of writing your test data to this JSON file, or to a JSON file, means that if your test fails, you've already got the test data there. So you can look back and see what test data is being generated or what test data is being obtained from a database, and then you can look to see if that error within your test is related to the data or if it's an application failure. And you can also reuse this test data because you've got it in advance. You can repeat that test over and over with the same data and see if you can resolve that issue. You've got a support folder, and within here you will typically see these two files, but it depends on which test you're running. If you're running component testing, you may see in here a third file. If you're doing end-to-end testing, it's typically these two files. The commands file is where you can add your most commonly used functions or create custom commands. You can create a login function within this file, and this will then be called or referenced in all of your tests if you need it. So rather than writing individual test steps for each test, either within a before block or before each block, if that login page or that login process ever changes, you'll need to change those test steps for each test. So for example, if you have all of these files where one test requires you to log in, That's a lot of maintenance that you would have to do to change that login process if it was stored within each of these files. The commands file gets around that because you can write all of your steps required for logging in within here, and then each one of these test files or your spec files as part of your before or before each will call your login step. So you're only changing it once here, and all of these tests will refer to this commands file and run just as it did before. Your E2E file is where you could put global configuration or modifiers that modify Cypress behavior, such as your before or before each. By default, in here you will only import everything from this commands, but you can also include other files if you need to. And like I said, if you're doing component testing, you would normally have a component.html file, and it's this file that would render your HTML components when you're doing component testing. Some articles may make references to assets folders. There isn't a assets folder. However, when you run your tests, depending on what actions are performed or what kind of test runs you're doing, you may find that Cypress creates a downloads folder, which is automatically created when your test downloads files. You'll also have a screenshots folder, which is generated when your test calls for creating or obtaining screenshots. And you'll also see a videos folder, which is generated when you execute your tests. And that's an overview of your Cypress default structure. If you like this video, please give it a like, add a comment as to what you think I need to improve on, or what you'd like to see next. Thank you very much.